Okay, I want to watch this thing from Yong about the mock review scores that Microsoft used in the lead up to the release of Arcane's latest Redfall. Now, if you're not familiar with this is the video I just put in chat. If you're not familiar with it, basically Phil Spencer came out and said after Redfall's reviews dropped that were terrible, he said, well, we ran internal reviews and we're very surprised that the game has been received the way it did or was, because according to our internal reviews, this was not how the game was going to be received. We thought it was going to be received pretty well, and so we're totally shocked at the reception, which is really weird because I don't think it took a genius to figure out that this game was not going to make anybody happy. Like, the reason the reception has almost been unanimous in its negativity is because the game clearly has major design issues. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem like it's made for anybody. Like, it just isn't a very fun concept. And the game itself is just not put together in a very interesting way or a fun way. So the whole thing is just weird. The whole thing is weird. Sean, off to work listening in the car. Have a good one, guy. Sean, much love. See you. Drive safe. So it's going to be interesting. Let's see what this is about. Talk to me, Yong. Talk to me. Teach me. Lead me in ways of righteousness.
People are still wondering just what the heck happened behind the scenes. How could they launch the game this way? Why was it not delayed? Was there trouble development behind the scenes? How was this approved for launch given the half-baked state and the unpolished state that it launched in? The review scores keep getting worse. I think the Metascore's actually gotten lower. It's sitting at a 56 now on Xbox Series X. The user score is at a 3.1. And then on the PC version, 55 Metascore and user score of 1.9. You've got the Open Critic page that shows that top critics have rated this game at 59, but only 14% would actually recommend this game despite the score, which is quite abysmal. On Steam, still mostly negative reviews, sitting at 32% from 1,500 reviews, which makes Redfall still among the worst user-rated games on Steam of all time in the top 20. This is not fully updated. This is 29%. Even at 32%, you can see right here that number 20 here is 34%. It'd be below that. And then in terms of player engagement, you can see right here that after a meager all-time peak of 6,000 players, a little over 6,000 players, now we're in the triple digits in terms of how many players are engaging with this game on a daily basis. Now, in a recent...
To be fair, though, I want to play devil's advocate a little bit because I find this really stupid. Pointing to Steam DB numbers to gauge the success of a Game Pass title, I think is a little disingenuous because most people are playing this through Game Pass because it's included. If you pay $15 for Game Pass Ultimate, you get Game Pass Ultimate, the whole catalog, and you get Redfall. Granted, the launcher sucks ass, but to point to this as like, see, clearly the game is flopping, I find really, really dumb. If you had like Xbox DB, then we're talking. I'd be interested in those numbers. But pointing to Steam DB for these numbers is like, I think he's just doing it because a lot of other journalists and reporters have pointed to this number and been like, see, the numbers are dropping, peak players are dropping. And I guess if the point is, as a percentage, you can say, hey, less than 10% of the peak are playing the game now, just a few days after launch. I guess you could say that, but like for me, in my use case, the only reason I played on Steam was because the launcher was so broken. And after I played for like an hour, I just returned the game and I moved on. And then I reinstalled it through Xbox Game Pass and we played it on stream after that. But again, like looking at these numbers, I just don't find to be very, very useful at all. But without a doubt, I mean, the game has not been received well whatsoever.
Over 6,000 players. Now we're in the triple digits in terms of how many players are engaging with this game on a daily basis. Now, in a recent interview with Kind of Funny, Phil Spencer was very open and candid about what happened with this game. He addressed Redfall's poor launch and straight up admitted that I take responsibility. I'm upset with myself. And that's all something that I've covered in a previous video. I appreciate his candor, but at the same time, Xbox does need to start executing. Sentiment only takes you so far, as I've said before. Now, one thing that I haven't covered yet is something that Phil Spencer mentioned about behind-the-scenes goings-ons, where he said that we thought genuinely that this game would rate better, and the metric that he used to see whether this game was worth launching in the state that it did was mock reviews. This is an article by News Outlet.
I do find it funny though, double digits higher is still in the 60s. You know, like it's at 55. So double digits higher. So at least 10 points higher. That's still in the 60s. And maybe at the time of the review, it was in the 60s because for a while, I think the Metacritic was in the 60s. So if that's the case, then it reviewed internally in the 70s. Still not great, but all the evidence seems to point to Microsoft being aware that this was not going to be like a banger. This wasn't going to win any crazy awards or anything. They knew it wasn't going to be received super well. They just wanted to get it out because they thought that it probably was just not a great concept, but it had already been in the works since before all of this, you know, the acquisition. I almost said Activision, then acquisition. This whole thing. I need more coffee. It happened before the acquisition went through, so they didn't feel like they could just walk in and cancel it, basically. And Rocky, don't worry, I already posted the link to the video. You're good.
Multiplayer first with a headline that reads, Redfall mock internal reviews rated it double digits higher, says Phil Spencer. Now, this is not the first time that I've seen a headline like this where a disastrously launched game came out to really poor reviews, didn't sell very well, and then after the fact, a developer or a producer or somebody higher up in the chain comes out and says, you know, we thought the mock reviews were a good indicator that this game was, you know, while not perfect, good enough to ship in the state that it did. And to this day, I'm still wondering, why the heck do we rely on these mock reviews that are woefully unrepresentative of real-world conditions? And how are these mock reviews taking precedent over people higher up in the chain who can make tangible decisions, actually playing the game, sitting down, checking it out, and, you know, basing decisions off of what's actually there? Because with Redfall, it's immediately apparent that the game is woefully underbaked. The game design, the empty open world, the seriously messed up enemy AI that has been highlighted by pretty much universally all reviewers out there who check this game out, just how underbaked everything about this game feels. There's some conceptual elements that definitely feel like they have potential with Redfall, but this game is so woefully underrealized that I don't know how mock reviews became the metric for, yeah, no, Redfall's in a good enough place, let's ship this out there.
I mean, again, it might have just been that the mock reviewers said, hey, if you get this polished and it's in a good technical state, we'd give it a 75. Maybe that's what they said. Because a lot of people have done reviews, or who have done reviews, will tell you, including myself, that we'll play games and we run into technical issues and we'll tell the developers or the publisher about it, and they'll say, oh, that's on our list of day one patch fixes. Okay. So then it puts the reviewer in this weird spot where it's like, okay, do I ding the review because it has bugs, the version I'm playing has bugs, or do I take their word for it that they're going to fix it? Like, what do you do? And it depends on how severe the bugs are. Like in if you guys remember my review of God of War Ragnarok, I had multiple soft locks, that they later fixed. I believe they fixed them on launch day, or for launch day, because I told them like a week before the game came out, hey, I ran into this thing, Brock just like doesn't spawn and you can't do the puzzle. And so they fixed it. It's no longer a problem, but they told me they would fix it, and they sure enough did. However, there's been other times for like AA studios, I won't name them specifically, but AA studios where I've mentioned bugs that were not fixed on day one at all. When I did that Callisto Protocol review, Callisto Protocol ran really well on whatever it was, like Sunday morning, but they issued a patch at Sunday at like 3 p.m. that broke everything. And then all of a sudden the reviews came out and they didn't match up. So sometimes it's not necessarily the reviewer's fault that the review doesn't match the game itself. Sometimes it's just that like the conversation between the devs and the marketing team, or the devs and the reviewer, wasn't clear enough, or they simply failed to address the issues that the reviewers put out. And what all of this seems like to me is that reviewers probably said, hey, if the game is running well, it probably is like a C+, which I would say might be fair. Like, I could see some people enjoying Redfall if it was working really well. I could see some people playing it and having a decent time, especially as a Game Pass title that they just get to download. They don't have to pay up front for. For $70, it's insane. Still, it would be a terrible, terrible game at $70. But as a Game Pass title, yeah, maybe like a 7 out of 10. More like 6.5, but like a 7 out of 10 if we're being really generous, if it's polished out the ass. But unfortunately, it launched super broken. And that's why the scores came in so badly. And when a game is so broken that it is visibly problematic, pretty much no matter where you are in the game, that's just going to ding, 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 lower and lower and lower the score. And that's precisely what happened with Redfall, is it's just like, it's busted. So much so that like you can't play 10 minutes of the game without seeing a handful of bugs or things not working properly.
There, because I feel like it doesn't take much to see that Redfall should have been delayed, not just even by months. Months wouldn't have been enough to fix this. By years, I think they needed to overhaul many aspects of this game. Here's what Phil Spencer...
I just frankly think that it wasn't a good idea. I think that more than anything, they probably should have just canceled this when they took over. Because if they did not believe in the vision of the game, if they honestly thought that this was just not going to be received well because the idea was not great, I don't think it was going to magically fix with more time. I think it just didn't make sense as an idea. Like Max said, yeah, Phil low-key threw Arcane under the bus. Quote, I believe in their artistic vision, followed by, quote, no point in delaying. They couldn't meet their internal goals. I.e., that was a crap idea. Yeah, I think that they looked at it and they just said, listen, I don't think that this game was ever going to do that well. So let's just get it out. It'll sit at a 75 out of 100, and then we'll have Starfield come along and hopefully hit it out of the park. I think that was their idea. But instead, the game came out broken, and it's at a 55 out of 100, and they're like, oh, crap, this is really bad. And plus, as we saw and we talked about in that other video that we did, it seems like Phil Spencer and his team have had a really different approach to how Xbox ties together with these companies and studios, where a lot of the like higher level execs have approached it as Xbox and these studios are separate. Xbox owns these studios, but the studios are their own thing. So they get to make their own little creations, and then those creations go out into the world and they're on Xbox, but they are still Bethesda games. They're still Arcane games. They're not Xbox games made by Arcane, right? And I think that was just a fundamental misunderstanding where no matter what they do, if Arcane launches a broken pile of crap, it lands back on Xbox. It still is an Xbox problem, and it makes Xbox look badly. And I think that they just totally misunderstood or underestimated the power and impact of that negativity, because it's a real issue. It's a real problem.
Specifically said about this, as anybody in the industry, we have all seen downs on the score, referring to the fact that Redfall launched basically mostly 60s in terms of review scores, and looking at the Metascore you saw, overall it's sitting at like in the mid 50s. On the score, we do mock reviews for every game that we launch, and Redfall's review scores are double digits lower than we thought they would be through our mock reviews. We would never strive to launch a game that we thought was going to review in the low 60s.
Low 60s. So at the time he said that, it was in the low 60s, and he said it reviewed double digits higher. That still means 70s. Like 70s isn't great. 70s that's okay. It's an okay game. But again, it just reaffirms that they never thought that this was going to be great. They never thought this was going to be an awesome game. They thought that this was going to be like an okay game that some people enjoy, and they just wanted to get it out.
Well, this clearly shows a woeful flaw in the mock review process, and low 60s is overselling the score that Redfall actually got. Again, looking at Metacritic right now.
Yeah, right now. But at the time that he was giving that interview, I don't know if it was in the 50s. Because even Yong said earlier in this video that it's dropped. And I mean, honestly, he was probably just looking at the big guys like IGN, GameSpot, those guys, seeing what they reviewed it. And I think they were all in the 6s.
Now we're talking about mid 50s. Phil Spencer has been
like 5s and 6s.
Basically, that based on their internal mock reviews, this game scored at least a 70%. And even if that's true, is that the best you can output? Is 70% the quality bar that you've set for yourself? 80% kind of maybe, okay, sure. But I don't know. I don't know what exactly the mock review said internally, exactly what score they came up with. But if it was in the 70s and that was good enough for Xbox, and that to me highlights just a degradation in the quality bar that they've set for their first party releases. And if we're talking about mock reviews having been in the 80s, then these mock reviewers clearly don't know how to do their jobs, because there is no parallel universe out there that would rate this version of Redfall an 80 overall average on your score aggregate websites. Phil Spencer can...
And I will say, I mean, I know some people were wondering, who are they hiring to do this? And I've mentioned that too, is I'm like, who are they paying to do these mock reviews that would screw it up so badly? And a lot of people are under the impression that they're going to like YouTube reviewers, so they get Carrick or SkillUp or somebody to go out and fly out and do a mock review of the game. I've done a mock review for like a small indie team, like as a personal favor, very early on in development. They wanted to know my thoughts on design decisions, and I did that. But like, I've never been reached out to by a big giga corporation to play a game early and then tell them what I thought of it and like score it. that's never, I mean, I've been invited to like preview events where they ask for feedback, but never a mock review. So it makes me wonder if they are just like having their marketing team do it, if they're having developers do it, if they're having people, like if they have dedicated employees that do that kind of thing and are QA testers and do mock reviews. I don't know, but I'd be very, very interested in knowing what that is. But now this also, you know, Phil Spencer is saying that he takes responsibility for this. It makes me wonder if Phil Spencer now is going to try and take like a more hands-on approach to it and start playing these games and inspecting them himself before they launch. It can't be inside. It's got to be an outside outlet or something. Maybe they're going to like IGN and they're paying those guys to do it. I don't know. Well, it's Xbox's image problem. Wouldn't be what it is if the ratio of its hits to flops were more in favor of hits. There was a huge stink made over the Order 1886, but nobody decried the end of Sony. I don't know if they're decrying the end of Xbox. I think it's more that they're like people are decrying and frustrated about Xbox's consistent failure, like you're saying, to get those quality first-party releases out. And it just begs the question of like, how is the management going to guarantee quality releases on Game Pass if their internal reviews are so off, if they are so hands off with all of this? Like, it really begs the question of why should we trust you?
He took my thing.